Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. At the Community and Membership Engagement Subcommittee, we focus on addressing the challenges and concerns of our fellow early career scientists by facilitating team building activities and creating networking opportunities for members of the Early Career Leadership Program cohort. Our committee is excited to organize the Leadership Dialogue series to highlight the role of effective leadership in research. We're inviting recognized science leaders from both academia and industry to share their thoughts on what being a leader means to them and the qualities needed to be an effective leader in science. These discussion sessions will be available on YouTube, so early curious scientists in the GSA and beyond can access and benefit from them. Through this series, we aim to promote conversations about the importance of good leadership in academic research and how it can significantly impact laboratory cultures and the global scientific communities. My name is Li Shuhe. I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Arizona, and the rest of our group will also introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Waleed Mawaz. I'm a postdoc at the University of Chicago.
My name is Belo Samuel. I'm a postdoc at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Brendan. My name is Irina Yushenova. I'm a research scientist at Marine Biological Laboratory, Woods Hole, USA.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Arnold. I'm a PhD student and I'm in Austria at the Institute of Science and Technology, Austria.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for introducing yourselves. We'll get on to introducing our interviewee for this today's interview of our leadership dialogue series that I've been working on for the past few months, the past year. Today's interviewee is our Dr. Brandon Ogbunu. He's an assistant professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at Yale University and also an external professor at Santa Fe Institute. As a computational biologist, his research spans across multiple fields: epidemiology, evolutionary genetics, and disease dynamics, using things like experimental evolution, biochemistry, applied math, and modeling to kind of look and answer complex scientific questions. Born and raised in the Apple City, New York City, Dr. Ogbunu's academic journey began, I think, with a chemistry degree at Howard University, followed by a Fulbright Fellowship in Kenya to study diseases, advanced research in evolutionary biology at Yale, and his career, I think, took you over from Harvard, Broad Institute, University of Vermont, Brown University, and ultimately back at Yale, where you're a grad, which is an awesome academic career. But of course, beyond the lab, Dr. Ogbunu explores the intersection of science and society. You're a prolific writer and commentator, contributing to outlets such as Wire, Scientific American, Atlantic. I mean, the list is amazing. Works touches on topics as diverse as COVID-19, Afrofuturism, bioethics, illustrating his commitment to kind of examining science and its intersection with culture and vice versa. All right. Dr. Ogbunu engages also in public discourse through various boards, including our own, the Genetic Society of America, which hosts this awesome project, and has also appeared in documentaries, which I didn't know, like Finding Your Roots, The Ceilings, and on Dark Magazine series on the legacy of race science, which is a very important topic that hopefully we'll touch on a little bit. And with that introduction, we'll start with our questions. Thank you for being here, Dr. Ogbunu.
Thank you. I mean, it sounds like you already got all the answers. You can just keep going.
All right. I don't think I can top Waleed on what he just said, but I'll just start with our first question. So, Brandon, you obviously have been an established leader in genomics and in evolutionary biology. What have you seen, or in your experience, are some of the unique challenges in terms of leadership and opportunities you've encountered while you work in these like interdisciplinary fields with kind of like a very diverse group of talents? And how do we as researchers can effectively lead teams with these kind of diverse backgrounds and also expertise?
Yeah, very, very good question. Very good, challenging question. And I think specifically with regards to how to lead. I think we're coming up on 25 years since the announcement of the quote unquote completion of the human genome in 2000, right? And that era. So I've seen, I was a young person then, but I've seen this field kind of completely transform in terms of the way the methods used, the way genetics and genomics is used, and the applications of it. And so what this has given me a view of is the way that people have been able to take this tool of genetics and genomics and kind of just walk it into all these different corners of the biological world. There's very few fields in biology at all now that have not been influenced by this. And I think doing that responsibly takes a lot of vision. As in, you must have a picture not only of where your field is, but where it is going to go. And I think they're right. And so institutions, labs, PIs, so from very big to individual labs that kind of had some foresight about this is going to be a tool that we need to apply certain ways. We need to kind of bring in a genomic space. We need to actually bring in, we're going to have mounds of data soon. We need to actually to start thinking about the way to train people to analyze it. And for a while, this wasn't true. Like the notion of like big data programs and majors and institutes, that didn't happen. That wasn't true, right? You were still getting a whole PhD. People were focusing on cloning an individual gene, and right when in fact the labs that were like that saw into the future, or the institutions that, or the companies that saw into the future had a lot more success. So you have to not be tethered to where you are and the way things are going now. You must have an imagination for the future. You must. Now, how do you get that? You get that by reading very broadly so that you're not in your only kind of in your silo and in your field. You have to think broadly. What's actually happening here and there? What's happening over here? What's happening over there? And I think that's a very, very key part to leadership is vision. And we're seeing this, of course, play out in artificial intelligence now.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a follow-up question. So how do you foster inclusive research environment in your team?
One more time, just because it was a quick breakup on my side, probably. One more time.
So how do you foster inclusive research environment in your team?
Great question. How do I facilitate an inclusive environment? That term means a lot of different things. The way I look at it is this. My career has been profoundly influenced scientifically through conversations and engagements with people who think all sorts of ways about the world. All sorts of ways. That could be methodologically, meaning you were trained in statistical physics, or you were trained in zoology, or you were trained in applied mathematics. So that's a dimension, right, of inclusivity. But it also means engagements with people who think about problems that I'm not thinking about, people whose lives have been informed by certain things that I do not think about, people from various parts of the world who think about problems that I do not think about, right? And because of that, I consider the inclusivity dimensions to the work, as in getting everybody comfortable with being themselves and talking to others, to be a critical part of the discovery process. Okay, I want you to bring your perspectives and experiences, even personal and cultural ones, to the laboratory, because I feel like those are important ways to think about science. And so how do I actually facilitate that is I encourage people to bring themselves and their culture and their experience and their methods to the lab. I want to learn where you're from, how you do things, even if it's something trivial, like we have holidays or moments that are important to you. I want you to teach that to me. I want to know about the things in the world that I'm not thinking about. I think this is an important point. And lastly, part of the reason why this is so critical for doing science is science is a creative endeavor. You cannot create well worried about having to try to make yourself be like somebody else. You are the most creative when you are, right? You can come in and you're not going to be judged for the way that you talk, or the music that you listen to, or your views on things. When you can be truly comfortable being yourself, I believe that helps to amplify the scientific process.
I mean, it just sounds amazing. And at the same time, young people could be scared. Of course, you're a great leader, you're very encouraging, but really they just come, undergrads or first year grad student, and you tell them, yeah, just be creative, but they're like, oh, but I can lose everything. So how do you help them to deal with this fear of failure, and if they fail, to go next, not to be just discouraged completely, but continue, try again, and succeed?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I talk about the type of advice that I give when I'm mentoring, and I draw this dichotomy that people laugh at. It's half of my advice is cool, hip professor advice. Half of my advice is grumpy, old professor advice. And I'm both of these characters. And you get them all the time. And you can talk to people in my lab. Like, we're dealing with an issue. I go, I'm going to give you both of these advices, right? Pieces of advice. So the cool, hip professor advice is, 100% of great scientists fail. 100%. I've never met one that hasn't. Number two, related to that, part of the inclusion part is everybody, part of the problem with science is that everybody does not feel like it is okay for them to fail. There's some people who fail, it's fine. They knew nobody's gonna be judged for it. They don't have a community that's gonna be judged for it. They don't feel like they're gonna be the last one to ever from their part of the world to be able to do science. And some people don't feel that way at all. They're like, oh, whatever, right? So it's important to kind of make failure in that process. There's a great book by Stuart Firestein about failure, which is a neuroscientist that's about this. So number one, so my point is this is part of the process. Everybody's got to be able to fail. Everybody's got to be able to fail comfortably, okay? And I expect that. I think that scientists should admit it more when they're wrong on things. I've done that. I've written articles about this thing where like I was actually wrong about this point. Scientists rarely do that. So this needs to be a part of the process. My dream is to give a whole hour-long department seminar, and I'm actually working towards this, where I can do it all on ideas I was wrong about. And it still be a great seminar because the seminar is about things that I learned and contributions that I made because I learned those lessons. So that's the cool advice to the student. Don't feel so bad. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's all good. This is the profession. The grumpy old professor advice is science is hard. It's not going to come to you overnight. I'm not going to tell you all day how great you are and how perfect you are and how perfect everything is, because that's not life either. And I think we see this happening. I think, I'm a grumpy old professor, so I think this is definitely a generational thing. I think we've gotten to the point now where people are extremely poor at taking criticism. Okay. I mean, like you say things about figure two and people have a meltdown. Like, oh, you're saying I can't do science? Like, no, I'm not saying you can't do science. I'm saying make figure two over because it does not look good and it does not communicate the proper information. And I'm going to tell you just like that. And so you need to do, so grumpy old professor tells this student, you need to learn how to take some criticism. And that criticism might be write the whole darn thing over again because it's not good. I'm not going to sit here for 2 and 3 hours and say, here's what I think about this paper. Maybe you want to take a different, I don't have time for that. I'm going to tell you to go write it again because it needs to be written again and it's not good. And that's not because I don't love you. It's not because you're not brilliant. It's because you just wrote it the wrong way, right? So I think that needs to be part of it. Improving and taking feedback is part of life, particularly when it's somebody's trying to help you. I mean, I've given feedback to help people and they've been like, what? I'm like, I've taken hours to give students feedback, hours. And the response I got was sadness over this being, I'm like, look, I don't have time to sit down and improve your work for you to receive that feedback as, oh, what are you saying? You saying I'm not good enough? Look, no, you are good enough. That is why I took hours of my time to improve your work, right? So I think on both sides, of that. I think cool hip professor says, no big deal. Let's figure this out. This is life. I got you. We'll figure this out. And grumpy old professor says, all that is true, But when I give you my time and my effort and my insight, I expect you to implement those changes, and I expect you to be amenable to change. And so that's what I would say to that hypothetical student.
Thank you. I would really love to listen to that seminar on failure. So if you ever do a virtual version, please send it over.
I'll let you know. I'm getting there. I'll let
Thank
you know.
you. Yes. Great. So listening kind of to your previous answer, I can really hear and tell that you are truly a passionate mentor, a mentor that really cares for your students. You want your students to succeed. And I know for me in my scientific journey, kind of having mentors like this that I was fortunate enough to have is kind of what was able to push me to do a PhD, and is kind of why I'm here where I am right now in my science journey. So I guess in your opinion, when you were talking about your cool professor side and your old grumpy professor side, how can scientific leaders and how do you kind of combine both and balance these two to be the most effective mentor, especially kind of to ensure that your mentorship is very inclusive and impactful? And do you alter it based on how individual students respond? Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Great question. Great question. This is a great question. And so I'll answer that last point. Do you need to alter? Yeah, you need to talk. Everybody needs different stuff, right? So you can't have one exact script for everybody, right? Like, if somebody's in the middle of an anxiety attack, I'm not going to be like, well, just go out there and make it better. Like, I'm not, I have some sense. That said, the approach though is similar. I think the things in my head is similar. And so how do I balance these things? Believe it or not, they go together very, very well, right? And this is how they fit together very, very well. When I sit someone down, what I tell them is this. I'll say, okay, number one, I am effusive with my praise. You have to be fair. If somebody does good, tell them. That's big. If somebody does good and above my expectations, tell them. That's great analysis. Whoa, wait a minute. What a finding there. I always highlight the positives. So what does that do? What that does is if I'm talking to you and I praise you when you do well, if you send me figure 2, and figure 2, it's always that figure 2, right? If you send me that figure 2, right, and I look at it and I go, all right, I will sit the person down. I'll be like, now, I will say the following. I'll say, remember last week when you made figure 1? What did I say about figure 1? It was beautiful, right? I said, well, you put a lot of work into that. Remember when I said how much improvement you made? So I will tell you when I like it, right? Good. Figure 2 sucks. Fix it. And what that does is I build the trust, right? I'm going to give you praise when you do well. It's a problem when you're one or the other. This is the thing. If you're all critique and negativity, well, I don't know what to think anymore. Because if the only feedback you give me is negative feedback, it starts falling on deaf ears because I don't actually know. There's no resolution in the signals. Or if I just give you praise, which some people do, because you think you're being nice. If it's just praise all day, well, I don't know how you really feel about my figure 2. I'm like, you're like, oh, this is an interesting perspective, but really creative and interesting job. I'm sure you put a lot of hard work into that. I'm hearing that, and I'm like, does a person like my figure or not? I don't know what you think. So by being effusive in both, and I'm definitely better about praise. Overall, I like to give praise. There's a trust that's built. So that I'm going to be honest, because if you do something honestly good, I'm going to give you credit for it. If you do something honestly bad, you're going to get criticized for it. And I talk about being grumpy and all that, and that, but you can always be kind. I don't believe in being mean. The only time I've ever been mean is when somebody's disrespectful to somebody else or harmed somebody else. That one, you don't want to see you don't want to deal with me, right? But outside of that, I'll never be mean because I don't like figure 2. I'm just gonna tell you to get your behind out of here and go redo it.
I want to pivot to your science communication. You've already been, like, as I mentioned in the blurb at the beginning, you've been recognized being able to communicate, complex scientific topics effectively and brilliantly. And it's something that inspires me to be able to balance that at the same time that you're doing your research, being a researcher at the same time, instead of devoting all your time to science communication. So how do you think in your own experience and the way you look at it, how important is science communication to being a leader in academia? And what kind of advice do you give to an early career academic in improving their ability to communicate science broadly?
You gonna get cool hip professor? You gonna get grumpy old professor? You gonna get them? Okay. Probably a little more cool hip, because ultimately this is a cool hip professor. So here's what's beautiful about this. There's a lot of beautiful things about science. It's the greatest knowledge creation instrument the world's ever seen, right? It just works all these marvels, and the stuff that you all are doing is a perfect example of that. And I think I've been far enough in the job now that what I started to notice is there are practices in science that are amazing and make a lot of sense. I love publishing papers. I love mentoring students. I love coming up with a new figure two. I love all of that, right? I love this process. But the way that we do science, in particular in academia, but everywhere, the way that I do science, the rules were not handed down by God. We do this because like somebody else did it 400 years ago. It's not the only way to do this job. And I got to a point where I don't care if you're a musician, I don't care if you're this, I don't care if you're that. There's just traditions, and academic science is loaded with bizarre traditions. Okay? Again, I do them and I'm down with them, and I'm a senior editor at genetics. So I'm the establishment, right? Like I'm the, so I'm not acting like I'm some kind of renegade. That said, I've tried to think from early, why do we write papers this way? Like, why? Somebody tell me how that structure came about. And was that optimized through a selection process? Was there a bunch of different models that competed and the one we do won? No. There's no competition for the way we do things. The way the publishing industry works, was that kind of optimized through something? No. Right? So my point is, I learned early on that the way that we generate information and share it with the world is very, very narrow in science. And it's been that way for reasons that are traditional. Okay? So I thought from very, very early, there's 100 different ways you can send a scientific message. And I learned that because it was reading popular writers. When I was young, I learned evolution through reading Stephen Jay Gould and Jane Goodall. That's how I learned. I didn't take evolution in college. I learned that because I'm reading Gould. Gould is a snail biologist at that point, for all I knew. I didn't know what he did. Writing about baseball and racism and culture. And I'm reading this like, yo, who the hell is this dude writing all this stuff? Without him, I'm not here. So because somebody who was established decided to take their skills and share it in interesting ways, an entire generation of people who would not have been here are here. And so my point is, I have a model for that I think, now, given that, I kind of owe it to the fears paying it forward. I want to be able to help inspire another person who may feel like they're on the outside, who feels intimidated. So I'm just kind of doing the thing that got me going. I think another thing related to that is, the work that I do in science communication, quote unquote, to me, that's not different than the science. Those are just different manifestations of my scientific imagination. So let me give you, for example, Rebecca, what's your field?
Neurobiology.
Neurobiology, right? So when you have there's a finding in neurobiology. Some of them, when you get a result, one of the first conversations you have with your mentors or your collaborators is, what scientific community would this land best on? Is this a cell biology finding? It's neurobiology, but will the cell biology community appreciate this more? Or would the cognitive neuroscience community appreciate this more? That dictates where you send the journal, right? Sometimes all I do is, I have something I want to say about the world. I have some results. I have a thought. Would the Genetic Society of America communicate that? Or would the broader world who thinks about technology appreciate that? Meaning all I've done is done the same thing we do when we think about where to send journals. I've just added a bunch of other types of venues to that list because some findings need to be heard tomorrow. They can't take 6 months, right? And or some findings are relevant to my grandmother. I care about her getting that point. It's a scientific point, but I want to communicate it to high school kids as much as I do my colleagues, right? So my point is, all of this, I think science just needs to change the general shape of the way it exchanges information. And this one, all right? So that's really where it is. The little grumpy part of it, grumpy old professor part of that is you got to do the job you signed up for. I signed on. I knew what the damn rules were. I knew that you had to publish manuscripts and write grants and teach classes and do this thing. So I can't walk into a job and be like, by the way, I'm going to do it different now. So yeah, my TikTok videos are my new papers. So I need you to review those and evaluate them. I knew the job that I signed up for. You can't do that. So I have to do the job I signed up for, and then everything else branches off of it, right? But internally, to me, all of these things are scientific and rigorous and dynamic and creative. And I think this has kind of helped my science because now I can just think of ideas and I think about I go, who would actually most appreciate this point? Boom. This one, however, is very, very technical. It needs peer reviewed because I'm introducing new things. But I have data articles that are in popular places as well, right? So that's the shape of how I am able to integrate these different things into a single identity.
I think that makes perfect sense, but kind of like a selfish perspective, as a PhD student who's been on the receiving end of this piece or this figure sucks, fix it multiple times. But fortunately, in a way, you just described tell it as it is from my mentor. The pressure to publish sometimes is just exponentially high. I just had my committee last week, and it's just been stressed over and over again that I must be producing some publications, especially with like my defense on the line and my degree figuratively hanging over my head. Although this pressure might be different for folks with a postdoc or like other early career scientists, but what advice would you have in the context of like what you just talked about with scientific communications to all of us that are currently navigating these challenging waters of just trying to publish academically under our respective lab leaders, like other than giving feedback in a constructive, direct manner and ideally a trusting environment, what other things could our leaders be doing, I guess, to kind of mitigate these stressors for us, like the people under them?
Yeah. So number one is, thank you for that. I think there's a point in there to the figure 2 sucks that I want to make sure is clear that I and that is figure 2 sucks is not enough. I should be telling you how to fix it. So that's a key point. Right. You know what I'm saying? I do it. So I didn't bring that out. So, and that helps the stress because now, right, now telling you how to fix it still requires work from you. Right. But so number one, it should always be, and I think that's relevant to the question because part of the mitigation of the stress is making sure that you are empowering people with the tools and the skills and the direction for them to improve and grow themselves. So that's one way to help this process, make it seem a little less intimidating and frightening is it's not all on you to solve. We do this together, right? It's a collaboration. It's not you fix this, it's we fix this, even if you're the one looking up the papers and running the simulations or whatever. So that's number one. To the general pressure to publish, that's where grumpy old professor comes in, right? But then I'll go back to cool professor. I'll go back. But grumpy professor is, that unfortunately is the job we have, right? Like, I don't really know, that is the way that right, being able to put and crystallize your results in a publishable form that can be reviewed and evaluated by colleagues and shared with the world is the currency right now. It may not be a currency 50 years from now, it may not be a currency 100 years from now, but that is the currency right now. Be that as it may, it is wise for you to learn the vocabulary and the processes of science as it functions, right? Now, let me flip back to, the cool hip professor advice on this, and that is, once you get in the rhythm and you start to act, this thing starts to catch on, right? It opens doors for you to be able to attend to these other parts of your interests and desires, and it allows you to open doors for other people. So, for example, in my case, that I was able to push through, put the papers into the world, get them through places where people recognize, have it technically evaluated, have my skills evaluated. Now I'm at a point now where I can do these other things. It's at the point now, it's even better. It's at the point now when not only am I permitted to do this other sort of work, whatever you want to call it, science communication, the science communication stuff now has helped my basic science work. So now I'm attracting students, I'm attracting interest, people that are interested in my basic science work because of the work that I'm doing in the laboratory. So I say this to say, when it comes to the stress of publishing, I can't fix that. That's not something that I can fix personally. You know what I mean? I don't pressure my students to publish in a way. I don't think that's toxic. I do tell them that is the currency professional ascendance as it's constructed. And so you're wise to get these things done. But I don't put personal pressure on people to publish. But unfortunately, that is where we are. But I do encourage people, if you have other interests, if you want to kind of do something else, you should be doing those other things simultaneously. I'd never, ever discourage anyone from following an interest. I think the bad news there, it's not really, I think it's all good news mostly, but the only bad news there is, being that way where you have pressure to publish on this way and you're trying to establish yourself and you're doing writing and you're doing SciComm. Yeah, it's more work. You're going to be busier. I mean, I was busier than everybody else. I remain busier than everybody else. I probably do, generate one or two or so less grants per year because I'm doing these other things. I mean, but again, this is what I decided. And I would rather it this way and take those costs than have it a way where I'm doing the job like everybody else. So I think in summary, there's no easy solution. There's no evolutionary simple optimum. They all have their trade-offs. But I think while we're in science, you should be doing, like I said, we all should be striving to do at least the basics of the job that we signed up for. We should be trying to kind of communicate our scientific results in a way that is legible to our colleagues. But that doesn't mean that we can't do all these other creative things. It's always hard to do things creatively when you're the first and a pioneer to do it. But I think the good news is my generation had it easier than the one before. And I think the junior generation is going to have it easier than we had it. And part of that is because people joke, Dean Brandon, when I'm dean, I don't ever want to be dean. I'm just making this hypothetically speaking. Right. Hypothetical Dean Brandon is going to be one of these people who I joke, I'm either going to be a great dean or a terrible dean. And the reason why I'd be a terrible dean is I'd get everybody upset. And here's why. I expect you to do your job. I want to see the papers. It better be cold. It better be technical. It better be good. It better be right. It better be. But I'm gonna make sure that I'll make the hipster community mad for that. But I'll make the old guard mad because if somebody generates, let's just say, and I use this example a lot, let's just say you translated a population genetics books to Quechua or to Igbo or to a language, and you opened up a whole world of people to understand population genetics. Tell me that's less useful than a Nature paper. Argue with me. Dean Brandon is going to take both. right? Meaning if you are generating original, brilliant work that is opening science to people. I'm not talking about TikTok dances where people do this and point to the little things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about rigorous stuff that's opening the world of science to communities that haven't had access. Come work for me, right? So what I'm saying to you is I'm routing it to point out here that there is a culture change happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's slow, but it is happening. And I think you should be encouraged for that. But it's my generation's job to make this environment easier for you so that you have your power to be able to do your science and make it legible in the world, which is the job you signed up for, but also so that you can do these other things to influence the world.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful advice. So lately, different genomic techniques like gene editing, CRISPR are being used to modify organisms like GMO in agri, babies using some genomics therapy and those kind of stuff with their own ethical bias. So how do you see the future of genomics impacting the society?
Whew, how much time you got? All right. Here's why. I mean, this is something I think about a lot. It's funny, like the thing that you think about the lot is the hardest one to talk about, right? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of concerns. I think there are technical concerns or challenges or questions, and then there's ethical concerns and challenges or questions. And what I find fascinating is that they talk to each other in a type of way. I think ethically, there's the question of whether or not one can and should be tinkering with genomes and generationally tweaking genetic information, in particular in Homo sapiens. Should you be editing? Is that the type of power that Homo sapiens should have? Is it ethical for a parent to be able to choose certain traits that they deem to be deleterious or suboptimal, or even just superficial ones, cosmetic ones? Is it unwise to be able to is it inappropriate to be able to pick that, or should some things be left to chance? And I don't have a clean answer to that. I think what I have is the way that question speaks to the technical questions in current genetics, and that is this. Right now, we are making this assumption that we understand the relationship between genotype and phenotype in a very, very simple and linear way. Right. And what science continues to demonstrate us is, I'm leaning in for effect. It ain't that simple. Right. Virtually every given trait we care about, outside of a handful of cosmetic ones, you want to decrease odds of depression. You want to decrease odds of schizophrenia. You want to decrease odds of type 2 diabetes. This is going to be a profoundly hard problem to fix with CRISPR. So my point is, part of the problem with modification technologies and these sorts of things is the assumption that we can do what we think we're doing, when in fact we're not. Right? Type 2 diabetes is going to be a disastrous thing to fix with CRISPR. Yes. So my point is, the basic science questions kind of relate because we're not able to do the things for many traits that we think we're doing. Number two, what traits do you deem favorable or not? Right? It's, again, that one isn't that simple. I've written about the film Gattaca, and I've written about it in the pages of genetics, and I've used it as an opportunity to have a reflection about these very questions. Well, in the paper I talk about this. In the movie, there's an ending, an alternative ending that was not released in the movie. And in the movie, what they have is they have a series of people. They show Albert Einstein and it flashes dyslexia. And they show Emily Dickinson and they say manic depression. And they show Abraham Lincoln. And they do this thing where they're showing all these great people. And then they show their disorders, right? As we deem them, quote unquote. And they're making a powerful point. The point is, if you think that, if you think you're fixing a broken thing, you might be also influencing the trait that gave us those great people. So there's anecdotal evidence, it's debated in the psychology literature, but like every creative person I know is grumpy. Very. You know? And it's true, like the most creative people are very grumpy. Right? I mean, you look at the study, Saturday Night Live and all the suicides that have been from comedians. And it's a real thing. So you mean to tell me you think you're just going to turn off one of those problems? That's not the way it works, right? We have terms for it, pleiotropy, right, and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is, it's going to be an infinitely complicated technical problem that will question everything, not only about our ethics of what we deem to be not normal and normal. You think about, we have a neurobiologist here, the neurodiversity conversation, that didn't exist when I was at your stage. It was just some people got a problem and some people got this, and you're just weird. Now it's like, no, brains are actually complicated and people learn and engage the world in different ways. So you can't just go around talking about things are wrong and delete them out. It's complicated. So I think this is where we need to have these conversations that are at the interface between the ethics and the technical science, because I think we're far away from being able to unleash that sort of technology like CRISPR-Cas in a responsible way.
Totally. Just to follow up, how do you think can we build better bridges between scientific community, like our knowledge that, it's not so simple. Changing one gene not going to help you. It's more complex. And general public to whom it can be, but you can fix it, just do it easy way instead of like any suggestion, tools.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is so great question, right? And I think this is why, like, I look at y'all, this is why we need a generation of scientists who can do both. Because it's like, those are the taxpayers. You owe an explanation to them. We, you know what I'm saying, owe an explanation to them. So I think we need people trained in both. We need scientists who are well-read broadly. We have students who engage these things. So for example, one of the things that I'm doing now is when I have a paper, I have two working paper preprints where I've done this, but I'm going to start doing this for all my papers. I have if I have a study and it has any type of relevance to the public in terms of the way we talk about it in the media, I have a section, relevance for media and science communication. I now put that in my papers, right? And it's a paragraph basically saying, so one of the things I do, I study epistasis. I don't know if anybody thinks about that, the interaction between genes and mutations and how that kind of gives you these, you can know what one mutation does, and you can know it by itself. You know what the other one does. You put them together, you get something, a surprising phenotype, right? I have a review paper about this that we've submitted, and I have a section where I'm like, how does that change how we report on mutation effects in the news, right? So this is, I'm not solving the problem, but I'm giving a small example of kind of something that I do. That's of something that I do to try to like speak directly to this. And in addition, you're like this, watch this. In addition, I have this thing where I'm trying to, it's even better than that. My dream is, and I'm trying to unleash this. For every technical paper I put out, I want a stream of products with it. I want a front-facing article, like a blog post that describes it. I want to make a video about it. I even want a piece of original art. I did that. I had a paper. I hired this artist. I had a paper in 2020 about copper and viruses, how viruses survive on copper. And she drew me this picture called Copperland. It's super dope. I haven't actually put it up. But like, that's my dream. So again, reimagining the scientific product, right? And to grumpy old professor, watch this. Is grumpy old professor happy? Yeah. It's like you're getting a technical paper. But my grandmother's happy. You see what I'm saying? So we should change the unit of scientific communication. To give a good example of this, what's homegirl's name? Kaylee, what's her name? She's Kaylee something. She just finished a PhD at Stanford in microbial evolution or microbial ecology. She's the woman who you would see online with the drawings. She would sit in a seminar. She was a graduate student. She would do the drawings in one sitting. She would sit and watch a seminar, and like by the end of it, have this beautiful drawing of, it's unbelievable. Watch this. Kaylee, for her dissertation, had her dissertation defense, and it had an art exhibit afterwards. Isn't that fire? I was like, yo, that's what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. And so what I'm going to try to pilot in my lab, and this is what I mean by culture change. We should, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to pilot in my lab, and you'll love this. I'm trying to have it where I do something where everybody, the graduate students, about to roll their eyes. Watch this. You give two defenses. Watch this. Hold on, Rebecca. Hold on. Yeah, look at that. Look at the faces. Watch this. Say, while you pass this, so you can laugh. They like, nah. Look how traumatized. But watch this. One defense. This is grumpy old professor me. I want that with the committee. I want us to sit and do a classic defense. I want to go through figure 2. I want to have a rigorous scientific exchange. I want us to be able to do that with time. I want to be able to nerd out. And then you have a public one that is for the public. I want that one specifically to not be for me and the committee. I want that to be for your friends and your family that are there. I want you to be able to give the talk to a loved one in the audience and let that be for them, right? So I want that to be part of the way you are actually trained. I think people still not feeling the two defense thing. Hey, y'all see my point? But y'all not feeling the two. Yeah. This is some mixed opinions. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Actually,
I feel
it kind of grew on me. Yeah,
whip me down.
after you kept going, I was like,
you know, it's growing on you. I don't pretend that it's going to be an easy change. And the goal is not to just give you more work. The goal is to empower you, right? Because the problem with defense is now is people are trying to do both. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, yo, no. Give the talk for your mother. Thank people. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's awkward because like some people are asking serious questions, and I'm like, bro, don't do that. The person's family's here, but they should be able to ask them because it's a defense. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And then the committee don't got to show up to the second one. The second one could be a party. You could give it you could give it with a glass of wine in your hand for all I give it damn. I mean, funny. Don't do that. But you know what I'm saying.
thank you. I will think about it. I have a couple more years, so let's see what I
We'll see.
decide.
No, I'm not saying, yeah. Well, like I said, we'll see how it plays out with me. Maybe my students will be like, man, get out my face. No. But I'm going to encourage it.
Yeah. I will think it over. Because I'm part of, I don't know if you've heard of Pint of Science. It's kind of the worldwide initiative in bars. And I did it for the first time this past year. And it was really cool to see kind of all these, like, from like your neighbor Austrian, like the 76-year-olds that's always yelling at you to quiet down, coming super excited about science, and then kind of just other students, like business students, also coming to the same place. And it's really nice. So I could definitely see this coming to fruition.
It's gonna take a while to catch on, but I think it would be, if we could arrive there, that'd be very cool.
Yeah, thank you. So kind of moving on to still in communicating science, but more so in the aspects of communicating science among scientists across the globe. Yep. So kind of as technology has increased and as science has become kind of, you're able to communicate with other scientists in different time zones all the time, as we're doing right now. We have a bunch of different time zones even on this call. Yep. This kind of connection has greatly increased over the past years. And the question is kind of, how do you envision leaders in research influencing scientific culture on the international scale? And what should they prioritize to try to maintain integrity throughout their collaborations, as well as diversity in kind of the cultures and the countries that are being involved in the discussions?
What an amazing question. And this is one that I think is the next. I think, in America in particular, the United States is we're very international and cosmopolitan, but we're also deeply insular. We think our problems are the most important problems in the world. Like, that's the way Americans are. You know what I'm saying? We think the things that happen here are like just profoundly the most important thing. And like, you know what I'm saying? You look around the world and like stuff like that's happening all the time, or a different version. It's not about anybody's problems being bigger or worse than anybody else's. It's just more about the fact that, like, in the United States, you think, right? And sometimes that's good, right? Because, like, you take the civil rights movement in the United States, right? Like, that has been that has affected other communities in a good way, right? Like, other communities now have built their movements around the conversation that was generated. A lot of our heroes, are people that inspire other people around the world. And I'm proud to be an American in that regard. That said, we're way too insular so I think the conversation around inclusion, for example, and around kind of like who gets to do science and how, is one that that America has like sprinted out and had in multiple ways. And it's looked like many, many things, and it's involved policing, and it's involved this, and it's involved that. But I think we need to now take this conversation about inclusion and really think deeply, not just about race, class, and sexual identity and sexual preference and gender identity and these other dimensions, which happen in the United States and in select parts of the world. But we need to think broadly about inclusion from like the relationship between us, our science. A lot of global labor is deeply exploited within science in a way that is a problem, right? People from other parts of the country, may not feel empowered to speak up. They may not feel empowered to criticize. They may not feel empowered because, for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of times that is exploited in science. So I think that is a major frontier. How can we make our global partners, particularly our trainees, feel just as empowered as our local trainees? If they have a concern, they can talk to you about it. If they don't like something, as Americans, Americans do, they got no problem complaining. Let me tell you that right now. None. Okay? And some of our global students in the hand are like, yo, I can't say anything because I'll have to go back to country X or Y. And that's got to stop. That's got to stop. So making everyone feel empowered in the way. I dealt with this recently. I was at a place and there was an individual who, was crying about feeling left out or feeling imposter syndrome, basically, in the individual. And I pulled this individual aside and I was like, and I gave a lot of the same things I'm saying in this talk, right? And I got an email from this individual a week later, like, that was really transformative. Individual was not for me. That was really transformative, and I'm grateful. So my point is communicating that same message of imposter syndrome. You are welcome here. Be yourself. Bring your culture. We fail. I'm not going to send you home. Providing that ecosystem of safety for our trainees. I think at the collaborator level, something quite similar. I think a lot of global, talent is exploited similarly. Are they getting a credit? Are they getting proper publication credit? Are you really, really including them? Or are they, I think there's a lot of exploitation that goes on. I think this is one of the frontiers in the kind of DEI space that I think we haven't had yet. So there's like certain things, right? There's certain conversations you have first. For example, there's a disability conversation that's happening now that was not even here 5 years ago. Right. So we're inching along, we're moving along. Right. And I think the international dimension of this is going to be the next large frontier, and one where we need to. The hope is we just get the best people in the world doing this work, rewarded and incentivized for it, not feeling exploited, so that we can get the best ideas going in the world. And I think there's a long way to go when it comes to our global partners.
Yeah, one of our last questions that we're going to ask you is, I think thinking about it now is going to be as you'll have the same reaction you had to the genomics question and its impact on society, which is AI and AI platforms. right? And so instead of asking like a very broad question where, you know, it might be daunting how long your answer might go on for, I'll narrow it down because you said something that was really interesting, which is trying to transform as an individual with your own lab, trying to transform how publishing might look like, right? You were talking about making certain products that come along with the one, you know, traditional product, which is that paper. And so within that, I was thinking like, how can AI tools and platforms? Because now you know with AI you can generate videos, you can generate images, you can generate things, right, by giving it prompts and giving it what to do. But the question I'm asking is not how would you put it in? It's like if you consider it, how as a leader in academia do you think about the ethical question around it, right? Especially with students coming up and wanting to use it. You as a researcher trying to figure out how to use it within your lab and all of that. So it's more the ethical aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the good news, or like this is the challenging but good news, and that is, it's already here. The question is not like should we be? It's already here. Like this is already here. This is not a hypothetical anymore. And the question is, how do we? What do we do with it? And so, if it's already here, it's already entrenched. People are going to use it. So I think we need to use a harm reduction model, which is you can't prevent people from using AI in this thing. The question is, how do you use it responsibly? I think because basic science as an institution requires a very particular sort of messaging. And the idea is your stuff's supposed to be reproducible. Your stuff's supposed to be, right, the field's supposed to be able to take it. And reproducibility is like the grandest goal of anything that we do. Somebody else should be able to do it and get the same result. Because of that, outsourcing that to AI, right, is that where an institution that you don't know what they're doing, right? You don't know what they're saying. You don't know where they pulled that from. You don't know where they pulled that point. Yeah, they give references now, but you still don't know where everything came from. I'm against AI for the generation of scientific products in the classical sense. I'm against that for that reason. I should be able to read what Rebecca does, the brilliant work that Rebecca does in neuroscience, and know that is a conversation between me and Rebecca. Rebecca wrote that paper, right? So I can that's a person. You know, when you port things over to AI, now that's not Rebecca. And if something goes wrong, if there's a milligrams, if it's micrograms per milliliter or nanograms per milliliter, because that's just a little error that AI, you know, overlooked for some AI reason, that has major ramifications for the way we study glia or whatever. I don't know nothing about neuroscience, but I'm just giving an example. I mean, I know a little bit. So I'm saying this to say we got to be very, very careful about the AI in here. Now, for everything else, yo, I posted a paper the other day to the archive. My boy, who's a big collaborator, who's a big AI and life science leader, he posts on social media a 10-minute podcast about the paper. Minutes later, I click on that joint, and I'm like, yo, how did we get an interview about our papers so quick? It was all AI generated, and it was good. It actually got nuances. It brought things in. I was like, I was shocked. And I know this technology. I thought I knew this technology and what it could do and couldn't do. So I'm saying this to say, use it for that. For these other parts, use it. I don't care. So now you got to tell people you're using it. You know what I'm saying? Like it. But if you want to do an AI generated, 500-word article about, that's fine. As long as and maybe you can modify it and be like, this, just put it on the bottom. With the aid of ChatGPT and co-author, me and ChatGPT wrote this. That's fine. That's fine. As long as you're transparent about it, is where I live.
Thank you so much. So this was kind of it for our big question series, and we wanted to do something new for the first time with you that we'll see how it goes, but we might incorporate with all the rest of our interviewees as well. We wanted to start doing rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh.
So we'll
I'm
have
the guinea pig, huh?
So we'll have 6 questions. And the idea is kind of that you give like a sentence, a word, a phrase, whatever comes to mind first, for each of these. And these will ideally be then used as kind of these external sound bites, maybe a quick reel or something to compile kind of a short, interesting catchphrase that can then be used to advertise the longer interview series that we have on
Got it.
YouTube.
Let's boogie.
Cool. Let's do it. So, Lishu, take it away.
Okay, I'll start with an easy one. What is one quality every great leader should have?
Generosity. Oh,
What is the most
you want one word answers? How are we supposed to do this? Okay.
so what is the most exciting development in genomics right now?
Ooh. I would say, I'm actually writing about this. I would say the gene expression, the understanding the nuances and particulars of gene expression, I think is transforming everything about modern genomics.
Okay, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
It's gonna be kind of harsh. One of the things that I've learned in life is that, and this is definitely grumpy old professor. One of the things I've learned in life is that there's, well, regardless of what you're going through and how hard you think you have it, that there is somebody near you who has had it harder, is complaining less, and achieving more. There's always, right? And so, right, yes, you should feel seen for the things that you're going through, right? But that's life, little Brandon. And right, and and you can get through this with that type of perspective.
What's your go-to strategy for staying motivated during tough times?
You must engage the hobbies and the things that you love. I require it in my laboratory. You must. You must. I have kicked people out of the lab when I felt like they weren't having fun. I don't like that face. Go home. Wait. Tell me what you're gonna do. You gonna watch Netflix? Which show? I want to hear it. So you must engage in things that you care about and that you're excited about and that you're passionate about. You must spend time with your friends. That is a part of the scientific process.
Who has been the most influential leader in your career?
Oh my. I've been lucky to have many. I'll mention my PhD advisor, Paul Turner, because he was a junior faculty member when I joined his lab. And I think that he is one of these people who led by example, led with decency, was committed to his family. He never let the job kind of like dominate his. He was just as stressed out as anybody. He was a junior faculty member, yeah. But he never let us see that or feel that, more importantly. And that was very, very important as I was developing.
What is one unusual tradition you would like to change about the current academic system?
Oh, that's a how many you're supposed to be rapid fire. No, I'm playing. Yeah, I mean, I think the basic notion that your appreciation and accomplishment is based on how your work is read by a small number of people. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how is that the currency for how good you are at your job? I think changing what a successful scientific product is one of the things that we need to reimagine now.
All right, so that are 6 questions. So I think we're You're out of the woods. That's the end of the rapid fire. And I'm tasked with the difficult task of concluding this, which is going to be hard because we covered so much. Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing your experiences and really unique perspectives with us today. I'm going to try to remember what we talked about. We really appreciate hearing all about just fostering an inclusive environment, shaping the next generation of scientists, and also just embracing failure as they come as part of the process, communicating science beyond our respective academic silo to the broader scientific community and also the general public. And the fact that genomics, AI, science, and life in general, it just ain't that simple. And on behalf of the committee and also the Early Career Leadership Program, we are just deeply grateful for your time and insights. We really hope there are more folks like you leading groups and programs in academia and beyond. And we do hope this conversation will inspire others to think more deeply about leadership in science. Thank you again. We look forward to continuing the conversations.
Well, I'm really grateful to you all. What a great group, what great leaders, what great scientists. Congratulations on everything you've already accomplished. And I'm here if you need me for anything. I mean that.